There's a lot going on, within the context of intuitive eating, that it's so much more than food. It really is like this starting point, but it branches out to so many other areas of your life.
Welcome to the Juggling the Chaos of Recovery podcast, where we focus on health and wellness and overcoming all types of addictions. You're in the right place if you're a mom, dad, sibling, or caregiver who has a loved one who is or was struggling with an eating disorder or any other kind of addiction. In a time where everything seems heavy, I'm here to bring you a very real, yet lighthearted take on what the heck we're all supposed to do with our lives while we care for our loved ones who are struggling. One thing holds true throughout it all. You can't juggle the chaos without smiling. At least a little bit. Well, welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm your host, Moira Gorski. Thank you for coming back here. As you've heard, I love to share with you people that I meet along the way that selfishly, sometimes it's things that I want to learn about. And sometimes it's just somebody that's come across my desk, if you will, that I find intriguing. And I know their story will be helpful. And in the beginning of my podcast journey, a couple of years ago, I wanted to learn more about intuitive eating. And so I actually reached out to somebody in my network who somebody told me was an intuitive eating coach. And I said, hey, would you come on my podcast? Because I want to learn about intuitive eating. So if you haven't heard that episode, that's a good one, but stay tuned today because I have an intuitive eating counselor and coach with me today, Jennifer D'Amato. And we've connected and it's been a great one. And so she really helps to specialize in helping women reconnect with their bodies, make peace with food, and redefine their health as they walk away from the diet culture and embrace all life has to offer. Doesn't that sound awesome? So thank you, Jennifer, for joining me today. I can't wait to have a conversation with you here.
I'm really excited. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, you are very welcome. Again, we've had a few conversations before we hit record here, of course, but there's so much with this diet culture and food rules and no food rules. And again, this is a podcast that we've talked about disordered eating and eating disorders and addictions and things like that. And so I look forward to talking about, again, just kind of that diet culture, ditching that and the things that you know and that you've learned. And, but I love to start out just by just to give people some context of why you're so passionate about what you do and kind of how that started with you, how you started to want to be in this space of helping women. So can you start there, Jennifer?
Yeah, I would absolutely love to. It's so interesting to me that most people I meet are really connected to their work, right? And it is what drives our passion. And for me, I hit a really ugly place with disordered eating, and I had dieted since the age of 17. And when I was in my mid 30s, I hired a macro counting coach. And unfortunately, that took me to that really ugly place of orthorexia. I became absolutely obsessed with tracking everything, and everything was in the name of health. That's really, the definition of orthorexia. And I was working out 2 to 3 hours every single day, right? All in the name of health. I was sacrificing time with my family, all in the name of health. I was watching every single thing I ate, and everything had to be this whole foods only. And it was chicken and spinach. That's all I ate. There was no variety to my food at all, but all in the name of health. And when I say in the name of health, it was all focused on my weight, the size of my body. And, I hit this place where I had lost all of this weight. And then I said, this is it. Like, I was let down and disappointed. I had been praised the entire time I was losing weight while losing everything else. So from that part of my journey, I actually had read Intuitive Eating, the book by Evelyn and Elise, and I reread it. I had pulled it out, reread it with a different lens on because I was so defeated. And when I reread it, I went, I didn't understand this at all. I really had no clue what intuitive eating was. And what it led me to was pursuing becoming certified as an intuitive eating counselor. So my background's in psychology, and I love the brain. I love, how it works, and that we have this power to change our thoughts. And I never really understood that all of my thoughts were so centered around how my body looked and what others thought of my body. And every choice I made with food was related to how I felt about my body. So I pursued intuitive eating counseling, and I have been walking in intuitive eating for years now. I've probably never been heavier or happier in my entire life. I actually don't even really think much about, weight or my body, because that's not our focus in intuitive eating. But I feel whole and complete now. I have 4 daughters that get to grow up in a house that doesn't have dieting or diet culture or diet language or negative body talk. It's like, I know Stranger Things is like really in right now, and I do like it. I'm such a fan. And I feel like sometimes I'm living in the upside down, because the world that I've created here and this home and this family dynamic has nothing to do with watching mom be on a, diet after diet after diet. So there's like, that's the most interesting way I've ever explained that. So that's unique for you. There you go. Stranger Things brought into it. How about that?
I you know what? I guess there's some Stranger Things pop up in Chicago or in Oak Brook, which is a suburb close to me. And I'm like, I haven't gotten on the bandwagon. I don't even know what it's about. So perhaps maybe this is my second or third, notification that perhaps I should.
It quite literally has nothing to do with anything except, what's really interesting is that show takes place in the 80s. And I do love the 80s. I lived through the 80s, and I think if we go back there, so a time when, most of the women I work with, lived through the 80s, and you start tracking diet trends, tracking how we looked at food back then to how we look at it now and what's happened. It really, for me, is quite fascinating, because I always go back to the 80s because it's so relatable, where there was this time eggs were evil. I don't know if you remember that. Right? It was on the cover of Time magazine. Like, you shouldn't eat eggs anymore. And it was this big to-do. My family never had eggs in the house because we were told, if you eat eggs, they have cholesterol, you're going to have high cholesterol. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, wait, we were wrong. We were wrong about this. The 80s, we really, of course, saw that big start with Weight Watchers, right? And that, even though the company says they have transformed, they have not. It is still, of course, this point tracking, which is calorie tracking app. It's app now. Of course, it wasn't then. You went to a meeting, you were fat shamed, getting on a scale in front of other people, calling it accountability, when really it was about guilt and shame. Building all of these habits that our mothers, for me, my mother passed on to me. So anyway, talking about Stranger Things, like, of course, for me, I love the 80s, but then you think about these diet trends that started then and where we are now. It really, for me, is quite fascinating that what we believed then, we really don't believe now. Okay, I'm going to do another one. Are you ready for it? Oh my goodness, I can't even, I'm going here, but sugar, right? Okay. So we talk about sugar a lot now. Well, back in the 80s, it was about 84, fat was removed, right? Remember, everything became fat-free, low fat, and we still see that today. But when we took out the fat, what did we need? We needed it to still taste good, right? Yep. So we added sugar and we added excessive salt to make that so. Now, here we are, it's 2022. And fat is king. Sugar is bad, except all we've done for the last 30 plus years is have this high consumption of sugar because we took out the dang fat. It's like, if we could, we're just diving right into this. If we could just stop, I know, right? If we could just stop eliminating anything. So, I don't know the familiarity for you or your audience, but those 3 macronutrients, your carbohydrates, your fats, and your proteins. Go back and track from, maybe for you, the 1980s, maybe you're just the 90s, whatever works for you, and start tracking what happened with food from the time you can remember. It'll blow your mind. And what it has been is, we'll just take out all, because right now we're in this craze of take out all the carbohydrates. Anytime we eliminate a macronutrient from our consumption, from our nutrition, right? We're eliminating vital minerals, vitamins, and the components of that macronutrient that help our body. I mean, that's what's happening here. So again, I actually this is crazy that we just went from Stranger Things to tracking diets from the 1980s. But
Right.
y'all, I think it really is quite fascinating.
But that's what they do say when when those low fat, and again, I don't know enough of, have all the stats, but I do know that when low fat, no fat, all that stuff started coming up. If you look at, the health trends and things like that, people got unhealthy. That was, I think, done to try to help people be healthy, right? And take that bad stuff out. But the trends towards health it didn't seem to work. And like you said, that's
right. It did not work.
Right. And now and now they're taking the sugar out, and now they're taking the carbs out or whatever. But like, I try to tell people, and people know that I have a wellness business. I represent a wellness brand. I talk about wellness, but I talk about balance. Like, we need carbs, protein, fats. We need them all in my nursing background. We need them all to, like, again, in a very simple way, for everything to process properly. We need it all. And like, I remember it just made me think of like we need to eat grass-fed, farm raised and all of this stuff, or maybe we don't need to eat any meat at all. And I just remember my mother, when she was in high school, again, this is just going off script here, but when my mom was in high school, in Michigan, my grandfather decided he wanted to buy a farm. So he bought an 80-acre farm that had cattle, and they moved to the farm, and my grandmother went to work. My mom's, mom and my aunt there. And she said, they raised cattle, and they'd send Bessie to town and and then they had meat for the rest of and it was farm raised, grass fed, and they ate meat and potatoes, but they went out and they were active, and they lived on, they were active, and they farmed, and they did this and that. And that was okay. Now again, this is way off script. I mean, my grandfather developed diabetes much later in his life or whatever, but they lived a healthy life I'm trying to say that they lived a healthy life by just eating the stuff that God gave us. They grew vegetables, they grew plants, they ate them, they ate the meat that they had. They drank the milk. I mean, I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's kind of like,
it
we've
makes
gone
sense.
to this place of like, can we just get to be more back to natural? But when people say get back to natural, then it's all of this stuff. Well, you got to go to Whole Foods, and you have to get the organic, and you have to be like this. And there's no, it's like, no, I'm just saying, just get back to the way we're supposed to eat,
Well, and I think we need to acknowledge, I love grass-fed beef. If I could just only have that when I'm having, beef, if I could get everything from a farm, I'd love that. That definitely comes from a place of privilege, though, to be able to do that and have access to that, have the financial means to do that, is a very real thing to acknowledge that that's not always possible, feasible, even feeding my family of 6. Oof. Yeah. If I could, I would, but most of the times I can't, So I think about that and what we have access to. And then I do think, again, we go to these extremes, right? Nothing seems to have a middle ground. And we haven't yet learned when we do that is when our health actually has the greatest impact in a negative way. When we go to these extremes, either eliminating or, well, you have to, the shoulds, right? You have to do things a certain way. Well, then what do we feel when we don't? We feel guilty. We might even feel shame. I can't keep up with this. I can't eat that way, whether I can't afford to, or I really just don't even freaking like it. I don't like this kind of food, but I'm supposed to eat it. There's this influencer I talk about. She did this whole video on how much she hated salmon, which I cannot relate to personally, but she hated salmon, but you're supposed to eat this, so you need to. I was like, what are we doing here? We've really lost that connection. And this is part of that. The piece of the work I do is connecting with yourself. We are individual. Right? I have different tastes and different foods that light me up than you probably do. I always use my husband as an example because he's an intuitive eater, but that man will eat like sauerkraut, fermented foods, pickles, I can't stand any of it. But intuitively, I know what foods light me up. I know what flavors and tastes and textures I enjoy that are going to be different from him. And that's what I'm saying is we've lost the connection. We've lost the connection to what we enjoy because food's actually no longer enjoyable. Food has become this, this marketing, food is fuel. Well, no, I mean, yes, but no, food can just be enjoyable. You know, food is more than just, well, I need it to survive, which is true. But what if you actually were satisfied? What if there was pleasure? Other cultures, and this is something I enjoy learning about, have words. The Japanese have a word, and I will not do a botched job on, language here. They have a word for satisfaction in their food because of how highly they value being satisfied in what they eat. And I know they're not the only culture that really values that. There's something very unique here in the good old US of A that we've kind of removed that and then replaced it with rules and guilt and shame when it comes to what we eat.
Yeah, I think you said it so well because I've seen it. Again, I'm almost 60 years old. So I've gone through a good amount of life and a good amount of changes in food and, culture and what you see on the magazines and, all, from the Marilyn Monroes to the Twiggies to the everything in between. And I would ask the question and I know what the answer is going to be. And that's what I want you to talk about a little bit about intuitive, like, how do we get past that? How do we get past the culture that we see in front of us and the shame that we feel based on what our mother or our grandmother used to tell us, or the dad said, oh, don't eat that because you won't be able to meet a boy if you're too fat, or, all the kind of things. Like, how do you get past that? And I believe, again, you're the expert on intuitive eating more than me, but that's, when I first heard about intuitive eating, I thought it's all about eating, but there's so much more around it. Right. And so if you can kind of give the, Reader's Digest version of like really what's intuitive eating. And because I think when people start to hear that, they can see how it takes some work, right? But it's more about that. It really is more about the mindset.
It is.
Along with eating. Right.
Yeah, it's really wise. So the first principle is reject the diet mentality. And there's a reason we have to address those thoughts first. Most of them have been so ingrained in us, whether it's been through, you and I, magazines before social media, right? We saw it in magazines. Oftentimes we heard it from our caregiver, mostly, our mother, or I have a lot of clients where both their parents were, chronic dieters. There's these messages of what is valued. And as you kind of said that, right? Like what's been valued for body, the look of a body, the type of body over the years has also shifted and morphed countless times. I mean, more times than we can imagine. But the reason reject the diet mentality is first is we really need to work through the thoughts. And you get to decide, what do you believe? What do you believe about food? What do you believe about health? What do you believe about your body? And we start diving into those things that have been, again, ingrained. You've believed them as truth. But then when my clients start questioning it, they're like, but that doesn't seem true. I'll take a really, really simple example. The Clear Your Plate Club. I grew up with it. Almost every single woman I work with talks about it. Years ago, I actually worked with some guys and they shared the same thing. Can't get up and go play outside until you finished eating. Can't have dessert until you finished eating. Whatever it was, you have to clear your plate. There's children starving. We literally grew up in a time where we had to hold the weight of world starvation on our plate.
If we finished our peas or not. Right.
Yeah,
I know.
Yes.
I remember. Yes.
And for me, it was overboiled broccoli. Gosh, so it was torture. So first of all, we're building this negative relationship with the meal experience and food itself. But then we're carrying this message that I can't trust my own body, that even if I feel done, I feel full, I feel satisfied, I'm not. So breaking through that message, even the idea of leaving food on the plate is something some of my clients have really had to do intentional practice with actually leaving it there. Some of them have come up with a plan of what to do with the food because the act of throwing it away is not possible for them in that moment. So we come up with a plan of what they can do with that food. But that one message, and again, this one is, I feel like, the most relatable. There's so many others, but the clear your plate is part of rejecting diet mentality. Learning to trust yourself again around food is a big part of this. And it can start with these rules that you've been following. Another one I hear often from clients, well, I can't eat after dinner. Like, you can't eat, at 7:00 at night. Like, what am I going to do? And I had been somebody who also experienced that being told to me at one point. And I was like, I'm doomed, if I eat at 8:00 at night, even if my body tells me you're hungry. Like, I really am having hunger signals. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I can't tell you how many times I went to bed so hungry it hurt because I was following this rule. There is no timing. Your body doesn't work that way. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we need the understanding, right? Sometimes we need the science behind it and the information, but sometimes we just need to be released to believe what's best for us. Mm-hmm. I've had a client, she's like, the reason she doesn't eat at 8:00 at night, and she's not denying hunger, but she'll get digestive issues. And she wakes up with a heartburn in the middle of the night. And we worked through that. So for her, again, she's the expert on her body and had to learn to trust that, mm-hmm. Had to learn to go, okay, this is not a good thing for my body. Actually, it's been one of the only clients I've ever had, who experienced that, but she knew. And then she just had this overwhelming sense of empowerment. Like, I'm doing what's best for me. So we start with rejecting the diet mentality. One of the other principles when we're talking about making peace with food is we start really going through what we talked about early on here about these messages about food itself, about carbohydrates. Because of course we're in this fad. You've used the word trend. I'm going to use the word fad, interchangeably, right? We're in this fad diet of we don't eat carbs now. Carbs are bad. I follow these amazing Italians who are like, y'all are nuts. You've lost your mind. Right. Like we literally eat pasta every day. So again, we work through those messages because if food becomes neutral, and I mean emotionally, there's no value placed on it. I'm not arguing nutritional content here, but I'm saying if food becomes this emotionally neutral place, there's no more good and bad to it. We actually can let go of that restrictive behavior. And when we let go of restricting, we no longer overeat. There's no longer these binge periods. There's no longer food being in control.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's true. There's so much to it. And again, when I've talked about, you talk about orthorexia, which is a known now eating, disorder when there's, too much eating, not enough eating. I mean, it was interesting. You said that food isn't the one controlling. And I don't know, I'm just going to say this, we talk about addictions, that it's not about the food. It's not about the alcohol. It's not about the drugs and stuff like that. It's really more that's underneath it. It's the control and the control piece of that. But I don't know. It's interesting that I just feel like it's just that it takes, like you said, I just like that neutrality. It just evens things out. And when we don't have that, the thoughts that pop up like, well, this is good, or this is bad, or we can just let it go.
Yeah. Because what happens when we do that is we feel good or bad, right? We start ranking. And this is, something I usually ask my clients when we first start working together, if they eat foods that are deemed good or bad, how do they feel about themselves? Like, how are they ranking their day? And they really are basing their day off of what they ate. If they ate, and I'm air quoting, good, they feel good. But if they ate bad and foods that were deemed bad, I mean, they felt so bad. They felt guilt. They felt that shame, which again, we're not even addressing all of that stress that's happening internally in our body when we do that. Like there's so much stuff under the surface that we're not seeing when we're feeling all of that food guilt, all of the shame for eating food. Think about that. That to me, again, it blows my mind is that we are in this place of high stress, guilt around something that keeps us alive. Something we need. We literally need it. So if we can get to a place where there is no longer good and bad, and again, I'm not debating nutrition, but we can't address nutrition until we've removed these judgments. until we've removed the guilt and shame of eating food. And what's really, really beautiful is when that happens and you're no longer restricting, there's like less desire. I've had clients tell me all the time, they're like, seriously, Jen, the cookies are still sitting in the pantry that I bought because maybe we had done an exercise where they were working through letting go of this label, the morality on this particular food. And they're like, I don't know. I don't really want them. I've used my personal example. I shared it on social media around Halloween because I have this adorable glass pumpkin that my mom got me, and I fill it with peanut M&Ms because peanut M&Ms are my favorite, and something, of course, I had restricted for so many years, even though I love them. Because when I would get a hold of them, I would eat like, the sharing side, they call it a sharing bag. I was like, right. I didn't share it. I mean, I would eat the whole thing and I would eat it fast and hard, where it wasn't even bringing me joy or satisfaction. Well, now we have this gorgeous pumpkin. I fill it with peanut M&Ms. My children are home. So I homeschool my kids. So they're here and I have to share things with them. Sometimes I have to share my peanut M&Ms, but I put this out for all of us. And I laugh because there's some days nobody touches it, including myself. Doesn't have, again, the food doesn't have the power. The food is not good or bad. If I'm in the mood and I want a peanut M&M, it's there. If I don't, I just don't have it. That's what happens when we've worked through the thoughts. And again, the same thing for my client recently. And she's like, these cookies are just sitting here and I don't really even want them. And it wasn't that there was any judgment, like I shouldn't have these. It really was, if I want them, I'll have them, but I really just don't care right now that they're in the house. Because you think about that, what have we been taught by diet culture? I'd say diet culture and wellness culture, right, which are somewhat synonymous here. Well, don't have it in the house if it's tempting. The problem is with that is, again, we go to the thoughts. When you're restricting even just in your thoughts, when you get around that, what's going to happen is you're going to overeat. You're going to feel like you're in that binge-like behavior and you stay stuck in that cycle. And what you end up believing about yourself is, see, I don't have self-control, another diet culture word. Like I don't have self-control. So I can't have this around me. So you try not to have it around you and then you get around it again. What we do is we literally take that entire cycle that you're stuck in, we smash it to pieces and it does not exist anymore. Now that sounds so simple, like I'm saying it, but it does take time and work. And sometimes with clients, we have to work through very specific foods that have had messages for a long time. Sometimes it's food groups, but oftentimes there's foods, like for me, it was pizza and it was peanut M&Ms, not just M&Ms, peanut M&Ms. I really did some work through those foods because I would eat pizza to the point of sick. I would be ready to throw up because I could not, I would just get around it and I couldn't control myself. And this was, of course, in my highly disordered eating days. I know you mentioned something. I wish orthorexia were in the DSM. It is not right now, as we're recording this, in the DSM. So it's not considered a formal eating disorder. But when we look at the spectrum, right, there's dieting, disordered eating, and eating disorders. What we're seeing is orthorexia is on the side of, from disordered eating into eating disorder. And I think what's going to happen in our lifetime is I think we're going to see it as an official diagnosis. And again, this is where I say there's the wellness culture, which orthorexia really has been birthed from, is contributing to that. Everything in the name of health, even if it means you are completely unhealthy.
Right. And and I think I talked to so many people, but I think we talked about this in our, when we first were introduced is, again, I've been in this, I'm a retired nurse, so I have a bachelor's, I have the education, and I've been in the wellness industry for 22 years. And I had an eating disorder in college. And, I was able to learn a lot about wellness, if you will, and giving our body nutrients and removing the toxins from our environment. And my family got healthier. We didn't suffer from some of the, allergies and things like that. But I have to say that, throughout my 22 years, I have had to come to terms with these things because I was pretty much, over my eating disorder. But then when I sat in a convention and was listening to the people from stage saying, okay, we're launching this new weight loss program and, blah, blah, blah. And this is how we can help people. And we need to make sure that we're the healthiest that we can be and all of this stuff. And I started, just like when I started to talk about this, I started to just feel like chills in my body. And they're like, go to the expo and weigh yourself and put this thing up here. And this is what your goal is. And I was like, I can't do that. It was just like all of this stuff started to erupt in me. Mm-hmm. And I remember going to the expo, and it was like, you see in those movies, like the room starts to spin around. I swear to God, that's exactly what was happening. And I was like, what is happening to me? Mm-hmm. And I thankfully had these two women that were friends and colleagues of mine, and they came over and we supported each other in that moment. And we kind of went behind the white curtains and we talked about just our fears and like our things that like had happened in the past that were causing these like reactions that we're having. But what was happening, it was like bringing up these, like, how do I really feel about like helping people with diets and with weight loss? And what are my feelings about food? And what are my feelings about, it has been this journey that I don't often share with people, but it has really, because I love what I get to do. I love what I choose to do and how I can help people in this space of wellness. But I'm not going to put the before and after pictures unless it's skincare, because I love how my skin looks, but whatever. But it's just this, I'm not, because it's like, I've had to, and I'm still on this journey of like, I've had to come to terms with it myself. And like, how do I feel about it? And how am I going to speak to others? But how first am I going to speak to myself? And it, I say that in the beginning, like, how do we get past this? Because there are some days that I still admittedly deal with it. Like, wow, because people are like, wow, you look great and you're doing great. And it's just like, some days I don't feel great because I don't feel like I look, it's like we have those, again, things, but whose rules are those, right? I had to realize, I had to come to terms with what how I was talking to myself, my rules, if there has to be rules. I don't think there have to be, but, I've come to terms, and just slowly, I've done that. I know people that have left this wellness space because they're like, you stay there, and somebody was pretty blatantly attacking me saying, if you stay there, then you're supporting diet culture. If you continue with your business. I'm like,
you know what I think you're hitting on is, I think we have body autonomy, right? Like we totally can make choices. I don't judge anyone, for any of their choices. I think we need to make decisions that feel good. I think you're addressing something that definitely comes up in intuitive eating is body image, right? Mm-hmm. Why do we diet in the first place? Why do we restrict food? It's because we believe there's something wrong with the size of our body. Whether we're told that, I have had clients as young as 8 years old who have been told that they need to lose weight. They were brought to Weight Watchers with their mom. Like mm-hmm. I've had that experience, with clients sharing that with me. But I think no matter what, we struggle with our body. And so one thing I share, a philosophy of mine, is I actually don't promote body positivity. And I always explain this, just so I'm very clear. Like if you get to a place where you're like, I love my body, I'm like, rock on, sis. Like that's amazing. But for me, the goal is definitely not mm-hmm. I don't feel like I need to love my body every day, because we're not. Like that's so real, right? That we're going to have days where it's like, meh. And we're going to have days where we're like, bleh. Those are my two descriptors. How's that for you? Right. There's days are meh, there's days are blah. Like we just feel that way. I think if we can even accept, first of all, that's normal, right?
And that's
that is
okay,
a normal,
right?
That's okay. Yeah. But I actually like getting to a place of being neutral. So I like to start with respect. How can I show my body respect today, especially on the days where it's maybe not a good body image day, which again, I'm coming to this place where in my thought, I know that's normal. So I'm not beating myself up. I've had, women tell me, even if they have the thought, first of all, that they don't like their body, they feel bad. So if we can even start to accept that's a normal thought to have mm-hmm. for us in our culture, let me say that, because it's not everywhere, but it definitely is, within the context here, that first of all, I accept that. Then I ask myself one question: how can I show myself and my body respect today? And sometimes that comes in the form of, I need to nourish my body. I need to eat. I'm just going to take care of it. I need to eat. I'm going to have some water. I'm going to have some coffee because coffee is life. Like this is what I'm going to do. Sometimes it's, I need to wear clothes that I feel more comfortable in today, that I feel, again, Sometimes I might go to confidence. I know, again, that could be the next place you go to, but today I need comfort. I need to be able to be comfortable in this body. That's going to show it respect. I had a client recently. For her, it was like, I need to just take showers, wash my face, brush my teeth. Like I need to remind myself I am showing myself respect, because then if we can show respect, then we can move to accept. We can move to accept our body, in the body we are in today. Right. You know, something you and I know we talked about a little bit before we were recording was even bringing in the principles of health at every size. We've been taught health and weight are synonymous. And in fact, that's not true. It's really not true. I mean, if you start looking into meta-analysis of data, I'm not saying a study that some diet is promoting. I'm talking a meta-analysis, which for your listeners, of course, this is like multiple studies all reviewed on this same topic, right? So we're really getting into the crux of it. It really is showing health and weight are not synonymous. That the BMI, which I don't want to go too far into it, but that the BMI, which was created by a mathematician, was never meant to be used as a measure of health. Like this kind of information, again, sometimes that's empowering enough for my clients to be like, well, screw that. Like I can let this all go. And others, of course, there's deeper work to be done there because we have been fed these messages for a really long time.
Well, yeah, you go to the doctor and you get weighed, which I refuse to get weighed anymore. And the last time I went there, not only usually the nurse is like, okay, no problem. And then this time the doctor said something to me in the room, like as we were going through the little thing. And she goes, well, let's get a weight. I go, why? I'm on no medications. I'm not visually overweight. Like I'm good. I'm healthy. Like my blood work looks good. Like, why do you need a weight? Well, it's just good. I go, no, forget it. Like, really? Yeah. I mean, seriously, I'm like, but
it's an outdated practice. And we're seeing a lot more movement in this because of the research that's being done with health at every size. You know, again, there's a lot of misinformation out there. And there is a movement we're seeing where people are starting to go question, right? Like, wait a minute. I know people in larger size bodies who are healthy, who are doing amazing things, who don't have any health markers, whether it's cholesterol issues, heart issues, blood sugar issues, they have nothing. Wait, it's starting to have people start questioning, which I think, if I can impart anything is question, get curious. We go right to judgment. We go right to criticizing. What if instead you go, I wonder why? I wonder what's behind that. Is it possible what we've been taught, what those messages were, right? The front covers of magazines and telling us this is what we need to look like. This is what we should be doing. I wonder if it wasn't true.
I think it's true. I think there's been, and certainly when we talk about the 80s or the 70s or 60s, or like my parents growing up and like even us growing up, like we just did what the doctor said, right? We did what the teacher said. We did what the doctor said. We did what the Sunday school teacher said. Like we just followed, at least that was my upbringing. We just followed the rules and we did that. I love this idea of like being curious. And that's really what I talk about too in my life is like, what's the possibility of, because I was so like, you got to just think this way. As I've been introduced to the possibility of things being different, like, I think that's really exciting. And it brings in that curiosity factor. Like, what if it wasn't, or maybe what if such and so that, but what about it for me? And then like, it just keeps coming up in my head. Like what you said, it's like giving yourself permission giving yourself permission to like take care of you and do something that feels good for you or that doesn't feel good or whatever, and not being so concerned about society or what your friends said or what this TV show said or what this influencer said. Can we just be curious about ourselves and think about that? And like, I don't know.
And what if we, in addition, adopt a belief that we really do hold for ourselves, that we're the expert on our own body, that we actually do know best. And unfortunately, so what I find in working with women is it's a disconnect And it's a disconnect because, of course, we've listened to all these other messages. We believe, that somebody else is the expert. We believe that, it was Weight Watchers was the expert. It was Slim Fast was the expert. It's keto is the expert. Like everybody else is the expert on our body but us. And that's something that I know I want to impart on every single woman that I work with, is that no matter what they believe, without a doubt, they're the expert. And if they don't know something, like any good expert would, they're going to get curious, they're going to ask questions, and they're going to dive deeper to go, what do I think about this? What's happening in my body? And then when you believe you're the expert, you trust the expert. I mean, think about that. Like if you really are the expert and you know that, you're going to trust, I'm hungry. I've had enough. I don't want that. It feels good to move today. I need rest. This food is something I don't want. This is something I enjoy a lot of. Like, you're not going to be questioning your own choices anymore.
Right. And that's okay. And I think it's like that. I think of like, when I think of the foods that I prefer, I often bring up, it's like eat for your blood type. Because, I looked at eat for my blood type and I'm a type A positive, of course. And, it fits in with, I'm probably, and that's why I like, more vegetarian food, because I'm an A positive or whatever. Like, I don't know, maybe there's some truth to that. There's a whole couple of books written on that, but I don't know. Like, I say that because people are like, somebody will say that and then they're like, oh, but that means I'm supposed to eat keto. Oh, that means I'm supposed to eat for my blood type. It's like everybody's looking for this little label that they can put on.
But why? Why are we doing it? We're going to that because we really are so focused on changing our body. Is really most of the time, I'd say that I really, in the work that I do, I haven't met someone, is the reason wasn't I need to lose weight. If I lose weight, then X, Y, and Z will happen for me. If I lose weight, then this. That's why we do it in the first place. I mean, it's not about health. It's about, and really that's the part of the messaging that's coming is it really isn't about health. It's about our weight. And again, if we can separate the two and start defining even, okay, so what is health for you? And sometimes we are looking at those markers, our cholesterol and our blood sugar and our heart health and, our joints and our bones and how things feel in our body instead of this arbitrary number on the scale. I mean, if you think about that, were you ever taught that your body is meant to change? Were we ever taught, past puberty, maybe, that your body's going to change? Especially as we hit perimenopause and menopause, right? As women, like those things happen, very naturally. And I'm not saying it's not true for men. I just can't speak to their particular cycles and all of that. But I mean, they go through puberty, they go through hormonal changes, right? Our bodies are meant to change. They're not meant to stay the same. And I think if we could impart that on the next generation, like something in my home that is taught is your bodies are meant to change. They're not meant to stay the same. And what if we believed that as a truth?
Right.
I mean, imagine like we'd stop pursuing trying to fix something that's not broken.
Right. And I think if anybody's followed my podcast for the last couple of years, there are so many, you said something earlier that about your story, and we've mentioned it a few times. It's come up like that, like you lost the weight and then you're like, oh, is this it? And we have this like, okay, we want to do this. And then once we're there, like we're still empty. And if I could name, Laura Nosek, there's a few people that I interviewed that same thing. They realized that they were doing all these things, but they were still empty inside. And you need to find, for her, it was, the God that she believed in was the only thing that could fill that emptiness inside of her. Like we're doing all these things for what?
Yeah. I always say weight loss does not solve body image issues. It doesn't. And I really did. I really believed for the majority of my life, if I lost enough weight, like everything would open up to me. My life would literally just be better. And when it didn't happen that way, and the heartbreak comes, when you stop pursuing that because you've been commented on, complimented on. I mean, people were complimenting my disordered eating. People were complimenting without knowing my exhaustion, my neglect of things that needed care, that I was really in a very deep, dark place. All of that goes away too. And then you start really questioning everything.
Right.
Like, wait a minute, not only did this not give me what I thought, now I feel worse.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I feel like there's something wrong with me, you know, and again, you know, we could have another conversation at some point about the commenting on bodies, right? Mm-hmm. Which is, you know, I know you alluded to experiencing that as well, that what if that stopped? Good or bad, mm-hmm. you know, whether we're making a negative comment, which just seems to be on the rise, you know, really concerning for me, but even the positive comments about bodies. What if we stopped commenting on other people's bodies? I mean, I know you've probably experienced this personally, even, you know, with the stories that I've heard you share in your podcast of, you know, you could be complimenting an eating disorder. Mm-hmm. And people are just not aware. And it doesn't matter the size of the body that you're seeing. You can be complimenting somebody who's really, really struggling.
Mm-hmm. Right. And again, we could talk forever, but I do want to, you know, say these few things as we, you know, appreciate each other's time here too. But like, you know, my daughter is in a good place. People have said, wow, she looks good. Okay. And then my daughter's also said, you know, in this eating disorder world, like those that are anorexic, like sometimes it's like they want to look sicker. They want to be sicker so that they'll get the attention, you know, and then people will say, well, she's overweight. How could she have an eating disorder? And like, it's all of these, there's just so much. And like, does get to that languaging, like, what are we, and it just made me think of, what's her name just wrote a book. It just came out. You probably have seen it. You know, how are you really? Like, sometimes it's like, how are you doing? Not just like, wow, you look great today, but like, how are you today? You know, how are you really? You know, oh, you look good. You feel, you know, all of those things. But it's like, that's the languaging that we have to, like you said, that we should be more aware of. We need to stop that, like commenting to others or having those interactions that we're asking, you know, we're commenting again about how they look, you know, wow, you look, you know, all this. It's like, I don't know. I could talk on and on about this because it's not about how we look. It's about how are you feeling inside? Like, how are things going for you? We talked before we went on the air here. Things are pretty heavy in both of our worlds. Like, how are you really? Like, you know, like that's what we need to do. That's what I love about doing is connecting with people again, but just having these conversations that, again, be curious, like be careful with what you say or, you know,
or don't say anything at all if it's going to lead to commenting on someone's body. Right. If we could give a piece of advice to end here, it would be don't make a comment. If you love the dress she's wearing, let her know that dress is gorgeous and you love it. You know, if she is one of the kindest people, you know, tell her that, you know,
right. If her hair looks great, like say, wow, I love your haircut or I love your hair color. Yeah, it doesn't. And, you know, you talk about like dressing, you know, I know that that's part of the reason. I mean, I love to dress well. I love to dress up. And it is kind of my way of like, yeah, like, I don't know. You said it earlier in a really nice way and I can't remember, but it's like, sometimes I just dress well and I put on something nice because I look really good in it. And I'm like, wow, my body does look good. And so then I feel good about myself that day. Maybe it's on a day that like, I don't know how I'm feeling, but you know, I'm going to wear that. And I know that helps me just show up a little bit with a bigger smile on my face. And then people say, wow, I love your outfit. I'm like, thanks. So do I, you know?
Yeah. I mean, that's a whole other podcast right there is talking about our clothes and our body and our comfort and confidence. Like really, that is a whole other level, which is why this work is so deep. It's why this work is personal to each of the individuals I work with. You know, yes, there's some overarching things that are going on, but everybody has their own story with food. Everybody has their own body story, you know, history with how their body has been made to feel, how they have felt in their body. So it's really why this work, you know, takes time because you're undoing at the same time you're establishing what you believe for yourself. Like there's a lot going on, you know, within the context of intuitive eating that it's so much more than food. It really is like this starting point, but it branches out to so many other areas of your life.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to wrap things up and, you know, hope people can hear it, that it's like, just like all these fads, right, that we talked about beforehand, that we can't just, one fad isn't for everybody. One diet isn't, whatever, we're not going to go there, but, one thing isn't for everybody. Same thing with this, like, it's deep work, and it's going to be what works for me is going to be different than works for you, but it has this, I don't know. I just like that. Like, it doesn't need, and maybe as we talked about, maybe it's because I'm an Enneagram 4. I don't want to be like everybody else. I'm not going to be in this same, but I don't know. I think what the work that you do is great. And we need to have more conversations like this, and give women and men, the space to have these conversations, to give themselves permission, like you said, to be curious. Like, what is this? And like, just stop the noise and start asking yourself, like, what's really going on and stuff like that. I don't know. We could talk for hours, but I'm going to have you wrap this up and say, let you have your own podcast. You have a way that people can reach you. So I'd love for you to share that. I will certainly put that in the show notes, but also just, wrapping up with kind of your last words of wisdom too.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This is, I could talk for hours about this. It's what I do. And I do talk about it on my podcast, which is Health, Life, and More for Women. I used to cover a wide variety of topics. I'm actually about to start season 4. Like, I'm wrapping up season 3 of my podcast, and all of season 3 was everything about intuitive eating. And that's really where my heart and focus is. So moving forward, that's everything on there. I have a website, healthcoach4life.com. And the 4 in that is the number 4, because I have 4 daughters, and my purpose and mission is to dismantle diet culture for the future generation, which includes those 4 amazing humans. I'm an Instagram girl, which I know we hang out on there. So Jennifer_health coach for life. You can find me on Instagram. I'm usually doing something fun, because if it's not fun, I'm not going to do it. So on that note, my last piece I'll leave you with: if you love the food, eat it, enjoy it. If you don't bother.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Somebody called me a reel queen the other day because of my reels. I go, listen, I'm having fun with it. And again, one of my other girlfriends said, we're starting to see your personality in those reels. I go, well, that's what it's all about. You got to have fun, and you have to show people that life is worth living, and life is worth going to have, just find some fun in it. So I'm glad that we've connected. Thank you so much for sharing. I know I will continue to follow you, and we'll continue these conversations, but thanks for being here, Jennifer. I really do appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. And again, thanks for listening. Please do share these. These are, I believe they're just wonderful, powerful conversations that we have here on this podcast. And I do it so that I can learn things, as I said in the beginning, but also so that others can learn and feel like they're not alone in this world of struggle, food, rules, all that type of stuff. So please share these podcasts with others so that others can learn too. And we'll talk to you next time. Thanks for listening. If you like this podcast, head over to iTunes and leave me a 5-star review. Share it with others, and make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a thing. I've got a tribe over on Facebook, so head over there and search for Juggling the Chaos of Recovery Podcast Tribe. And do you know somebody who has a story to share, a story of recovery and hope? Please let me know, as I'd love to feature them as a guest on one of these next upcoming podcasts. And perhaps you're looking for a community of like-minded, collaborative, and supportive people who cheer each other on as we strive to improve our lives. If that sounds like something you've been looking for, schedule some time with me. You'll find the links in the show notes. Let's talk, and let me help you find your way. And I'm here to tell you that you're worth it.